Real quick before we get into today's video, just want to thank the people over on Patreon who have taken the time out to help support the channel, and just got to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your support. Once I start offering memberships and figure out what to offer for memberships on this channel, I'll start adding the names of YouTube members as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the review. Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys a review for Boruto episode 184. And now that episode 184 is done in the books, man, we got a lot to talk about. Hands down, I gotta go ahead and start with the opening because I know a lot of people were probably freaking out over that. So yes, that was actually Kawaki that you saw in the opening sequence of the anime, and if you look very closely, that's actually a sequence that you saw in the latest Boruto opening. So that's why, like, a lot of people such as myself and others are saying, like, hey, this opening, this probably is not clickbait because they're referencing a bunch of stuff that occurs in the manga, and now you guys got what you wanted. Essentially, you got Kawaki's debut, and the anime's actually showing you what Kawaki is up to before he actually shows up in the back end of this arc. So they're definitely building towards Kawaki meeting Boruto. Now, we absolutely have to go ahead and talk about one other thing before we get into Muji No Sacrifice. So I've seen quite a few people saying that they're annoyed at the fact that Samiris' confession to Sarada was absolutely cut out of the Boruto anime. So in the manga version, you have two versions of the events that happened at the very beginning when Samiri and Sarada were talking. So in the unofficial scanlated version, you have it where Samiri says that, like, hey, I like Boruto, and a lot of people such as myself until recently were under the impression that that was the proper and best translation that you had. But when you look at the translation that Viz Media had, Viz Media has it where essentially the dialogue in the manga is very closely related to what you actually got in the anime. The only difference is that Samiri has a line in the manga version where she says, like, do you think that other girls might like Boruto? And Sarada says, well, he does befriend a lot of people, but I don't really think so. And Sarada kind of brushes it off, doesn't really care too much. And Samiri basically says that it bothers her that other girls might like Boruto. That's about the closest you get to a confession in the official translation that Samiri likes Boruto. Now, a lot of people, they're completely upset over that, and the only thing I'll say is that the Boruto fans were just as upset. We had a moment where a few episodes ago, Mitsuki, if they followed the manga properly, Mitsuki has a line in there that a lot of Boruto and Sarada shippers constantly point to as a reason for why Boruto and Sarada are endgame, and that's actually the second time that they've cut something out of the anime adaptation that was directly linked towards the Boruto and Sarada fodder that the manga's been dropping in there. So essentially they're cutting all the shipping stuff out of the anime. I personally enjoyed that because I feel like the shipping debates, especially this early on, is something that's going to detract from the actual story. So moving into the episode itself, man, like, god dog, man, they did a good job when it comes to Muji No Sacrifice, man. They did a good job with that because in the manga, this dude was absolute fodder. Nobody actually cared about him, but in the anime, you get so much backstory on the character. You find out about his relationship to the third Hokage. They did so much to actually build towards his death, and I like how even in his final moments, he's still teaching Boruto, and he's reminding Boruto, like, hey, take care of my turtle. So hands down, that was very good. So now we kind of got the key points out of the way. Let's go ahead and back up and look at the rest of the episode. So hands down, I thought that they did a good job in terms of pacing here. So for those of you guys who don't read the manga, they actually adapted chapter 19 and part of chapter 20 here, and this arc ends around chapter 24. That's when you see Kawaki pop up. So it's at this point right here that the fact that they adapted an entire chapter 19 and then they adapted, I'd probably say about 30 pages of chapter 20. So for those of you guys who don't read the manga, a Boruto chapter is about 44 pages. A weekly manga is about 16, so that gives you about an idea about the fact that they crammed a lot of material in this episode, and yet it didn't really feel rushed. And I like how they handled the battle with those scientific ninja weapon puppets, because you have that moment where Boruto's once again using his brand new jutsu, the Thunderclap Arrow. While all this is going on, Katasuke is inside of the airship. He discovers the coffin that Kawaki was in. He discovers a lot of the actual science that's in there. He's having this flashback, realizing that, hey, I was actually brainwashed. I was under a genjutsu. I think they took my scientific weapon technology and they advanced it. And he flat out says that the enemy's ninja tech is on a completely different level, which that's going to be very important once you start looking at the inner members of Kara. So I thought that that was very good, how they're already building towards the next big reveal that's going to be happening later on in this arc for the climax. Those of you guys who are anime only, who are asking me a couple weeks ago, like, man, do you really think that Boruto and Sarada and Team 7 would have trouble with those ninja weapon tech puppets? What's so special about them? Now you're seeing what the problem is the fact that if you're Konohamaru and you're fighting against those puppets by yourself because Mugino is injured and having trouble moving unassisted unless it's in short spurts, you're fighting against puppets you have no intel on. They're able to fire off ninjutsu based attacks in rapid succession without actually going through that cooldown period. You don't have ninja tech like how Katasuke did, to where you're able to absorb the continuous ninjutsu attacks that are being fired at you until those puppets hit their limit. Konohamaru had no choice but to actually escape, and it's actually pretty impressive given the fact that if you look at it, all those puppets were littered around the ground. So that actually shows you that Konohamaru by himself without the ninja tech was able to at least briefly defeat those puppets. Katasuke, because he's able to absorb all that ninjutsu that's being fired out, Katasuke's in a significant advantage because he's able to ride out until they keel over. And basically the weakness of those robots, this stays true to the manga, is they can shoot off continuous ninjutsu attacks, but eventually they end up burning out, and they have that moment where they have to recharge and cool down. And so I thought that that was cool. You actually see that aspect there. And if you actually go back to the Sakura and Chio fight against Sasori had something to that extent also, because when you look at the manga version, Sasori had those flamethrowers on his back where he was shooting out those continuous fire release jutsu, and then you had that scene in the anime where one of his scrolls was a water release attack, and so you had fire and water release being shot at a continual basis, and that's why Chio and Sakura were having to duck and take cover, and that's why they weren't able to mount a counterattack right away. This is showing you the progression of science from what you saw 16 years ago opposed to what you're actually seeing now in the timeline. So I thought that that was a nice sign of the progression that you're seeing there. Now, after Boruto and them end up taking the puppets out after Katasuke's efforts, and Katasuke takes the data that he needs, the team ends up going out on this mission to find Konohamaru. They're continuing the mission that Naruto gives them, and once they actually stumble across Konohamaru, you see how Konohamaru's telling Mugino, like, look, you know, you can still live, stay awake, you're not having any internal injuries right here. And it really makes you wonder if there's something else going on with Mugino, because even Victor takes note of the fact that when he and Mugino first fought all the way back in the Deepa battle, Victor only hits Mugino with a couple of attacks, and he says, I see, so you're dealing with an internal injury. So Mugino had something else that was affecting him before this, but then again, that could just be me reading a little bit too much into that scene. You know, if that's the case, I mean, it is what it is. Just disregard that last point. But even when Al shows up and he's studying Al the whole time, he's saying, like, look, you know, you told me that you have found a way to live as a ninja, and Al says, I never told you that I was still a ninja. I'm merely a tool. Mugino in that moment reveals that, you know, his conversation with Al during the ceremony for all the people that died during the 4th Great Ninja War, during that time he had grown to respect the man. What I like right here is how Konohamaru immediately puts the pieces together alongside Mugino, and he says, like, wait a second, so you're telling me our means that you're part of Car? And once that happens, Al looks over and he says, oh, I really can't let none of you people live. And in typical Tommy Egan going after Joey Proctor from Power Fashion, essentially this dude Al shows up and shoots Konohamaru directly in the face right there. That was so freaking brutal, and I loved it. I love that moment right there, and I love how you get this moment where essentially Al is holding a scientific ninja weapon tool, which is this huge machine gun that you see on like the airplanes. It's super big, and he's firing off all these fire release jutsu, and it's the same thing you saw with these puppets. It's giving everybody a huge problem. Konohamaru manages to get a sneak attack in where Konohamaru is using his Rasengan. He actually breaks that huge Gatling gun that Al has, and Al ends up just knocking Konohamaru back, and he says that's pretty impressive, you're using the 4th Hokage's jutsu. So another bit of acknowledgement of Konohamaru's power. You're dealing with a seasoned ninja, so you're getting a little bit of acknowledgement of the fact that Konohamaru is a skilled ninja. And I like how in this episode, even Boruto tries to get an attack in with this Rasengan, and Al, you just see the skill difference there. Al's able to fend off that attack, and I like how Mugino, after assessing the situation, realizes that the only real card that they have at play is that Mugino himself has to act as a sacrifice. It's the same conclusion that Asuma came to when they're fighting against Hidan and Kakuzu. Asuma knew that there was a chance he would die, but he had to trust in the fact that Shikamaru could come up with the plan. Now in this case, Mugino understood, like, I have to give my life in order to give my comrades the chance to escape. Maybe what I do doesn't work, but this gives me opportunity. And so you see Mugino where Mugino grabs onto Al, he's trying to hold on to him, and Al activates this chakra blade and he kills Mugino. Mugino, with the last bit of his strength, his resolve is so great that he activates a earth style jutsu, and he brings the entire cavern that they're hiding in buried under rubble, and it gives Team Konohamaru the chance to escape. And Boruto, as soon as he sees Al's hand break through the rubble, Boruto wants all the smoke. He's ready to go up for round 2 against Al, and Konohamaru tells him, like, look, this data that we have is extremely important. We need to get out of here. We don't need to make light of Mugino's sacrifice. And that's something right there to where you're starting to see for Boruto that he's realizing that there's more to being a shinobi than what he actually thought. And so I like that moment right there. Again, Mugino's sacrifice in the manga continuity does not hit home nearly as much as the anime, because the anime actually made him a sympathetic character. I myself was halfway dreading this episode, but once you actually saw Mugino die and you saw the music and you saw the facial expressions, they did a really good job with this, man. In particular, when it comes to like the shading and the color palettes that they use, very good job, man. But hands down, I gotta say, the fact that they got in an entire chapter before the episode actually went to a commercial break, very, very smooth right there. Very smooth. So overall, I'd say this was a cool episode, man. I'd say this was a cool episode, just given how much information that they actually got. Next week, we should see Team Konohamaru go up against Al, so that's going to be very interesting right there. That's going to be interesting to see how they actually adapt those portions of the actual story. So my episode question to you guys is, if you were an anime only fan, how did Mugino's death actually affect you? On a scale from 1 to 10, how well do you think it was executed? And if you're a manga reader such as myself, how much of an improvement was what you actually saw with Mugino's death in comparison to the manga version? Then the second question that I have for all of you guys is, now that we've seen on 3 occasions how they've cut out a lot of the shipping fodder with the Boruto Sarada fans and the Boruto Samiris fans, how do you guys feel about that? Do you guys think they're making the right decision here? Do you think that they should have stayed true to the manga, or do you think that this was the best option in terms of storytelling? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching on to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.